since at least 2003, every year somebody's like, books are dead, they're dying. It's the end of books, no more books. And that hasn't happened, right? Like,
welcome to It's About Data, episode 49. We sat down at Day-to-Day Texas with Aaron Black, acquisitions editor at O'Reilly Media.
So Aaron, great to see you here at Day-to-Day Texas.
Great
It's your
to be here.
first Day-to-Day Texas. What are your quick impressions?
It's a fun event. It kind of got snowed out a little bit.
Well, actually, it's more like snowed in.
Snowed in,
yeah.
Well, but half the people couldn't show up because of snow and ice and everything. But it's been a great event. We've got luminaries like Bill Inman is talking down the hall, which is awesome.
Legend,
and a lot of new people, too. There were a lot of people whose first day it was, so that's been exciting.
And it's like the end of a first chapter and the beginning of a second chapter,
we're hoping,
too.
We're looking forward to what comes next.
Which is also a major theme, not just with Day-to-Day itself, but with data, because we keep hearing them, everybody, I feel like all the speakers are at least touching on where do our careers go in 3 years, what happens next, what is the next piece of this as automation takes over a lot of things, how do we grow, evolve.
So let's just take from 100,000 foot, like kind of after the onslaught yesterday, what's on your mind?
Well, I think the first thing that was on my mind was that there was a lot of kind of FUD around that, like the fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Oh gosh, yes.
Oh man, all our jobs are going to go away. They're going to be destroyed. There's these bad things, which I don't feel like I see, and maybe I honestly talked to several people. Not that I'm super old, but I've been around for a minute, and I talked to some of the younger people that were like, oh, it's this giant thing. It's going to ruin everything. I feel like we've seen things like this before. I don't think AI is a bubble, but even like .com, is framed as a bubble, but it wasn't. It rose and then it became everything, and it just integrated and became part of what we do now. And people are watching things on .coms, right? It's just a piece of everything. So I feel like we're moving that way, and I'm not as terrified.
I think that's fair. I mean, and you're in the book business. You're an acquisitions editor. I think that's the correct term at O'Reilly. And let's say this. I mean, let's kind of channel Mark Twain and say that the death of books has been greatly exaggerated, and that's been going on, I would say, for the last 20 years. And yes, there has been some decline in the publishing industry, and yet O'Reilly has, frankly, gone from strength to strength. I think there have been some low points in there. But in general, you guys just keep coming back. And so tell us your perspective on books since the .com boom and how things have evolved and changed and how you're adapting to the new environment.
Absolutely, that's a good question, because I kept thinking that as I'm hearing these data engineers go, oh, our jobs are completely disrupted and destroyed. And I'm like, well, I worked in books since 1999. I've seen everything happen. And I've got to tell you, since at least 2003, every year somebody's like, books are dead, they're dying. It's the end of books, no more books. And that hasn't happened, right? Books continue on. They do evolve, though. So we did see a lot of movement towards ebooks, but not in the sense that we originally thought. I think around 2010, a lot of the people who were my betters were saying, oh, it's going to all be Kindle, it's all going to be that kind of ebooks. And Kindle does fine, but I knew then, I was like, it's not going to be Kindle, especially in tech publishing, because the tech people they didn't really even necessarily look for a substitute for a book. What they were doing was going to Google and just typing in, I want to program X in Python, how do I do that? And finding that. So I was like, whatever's going to be next needs to have that functionality to be able to go, I want to go into this program and do this thing or use this tool, and I'm just going to type that in. So I was already early in predicting the rise of what O'Reilly does now, which is subscription service, the O'Reilly Learning Platform. So that's something that we've got about 2.8 million subscribers right now. You can get on, and there's O'Reilly Answers, which is AI-driven. That can just answer a question. There's a search box, that you can put in, hey, I want to know about Spark 4, put that in, see what comes up. So that's really where we've seen a lot of it evolve to, but that hasn't changed that we still have books, because that content needs to be fed in there, and people still want that curriculum. So I've watched my industry evolve heavily, and as long as you kind of keep your eye on the trend and what people need and which way we're going, you can ride that surf.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, and I think you sort of partially answered the question, but I want to delve into this a little more deeply, which is that, so with AI coming in, and the fact is now you can ask AI questions. Now, obviously, you said, as part of your subscription service,
Right.
you have, this, go ask O'Reilly, and we'll go through all our corpus of content.
Sure.
But how do you basically, and I have a feeling that's really where your answer will be going. But like, how do you really, compete with, say, Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT when I can just go up there and ask questions there?
Right, sure. So there's two big components to that. One is that ChatGPT and Gemini only know the answers that have been answered.
Right.
They need content. They need things. They need a human to have written something, said something, done something with that concept that they can ingest and then spit back to you. So they're good for things that are a year old, 2 years old, even the ones that have, RAG that are like looking at modern stuff. They they need that content. So that's where authors come in, where you're feeding in new stuff, new ideas. So I think that's a big one. And then something that has kept books going all these years too, that was true all the way back to .com to today, is that, yes, I did predict that quick answer would become a very important component. But even though it's a component, it's not the whole picture. People still want curriculum. They still want Matt Housley to lead them from chapter 1 to chapter 13 and take them on that journey and that narrative journey.
Yeah.
And Gemini and ChatGPT honestly suck at narrative journeys right now. They may improve. I'm a fiction writer. I can tell you I've fed it things and been like, okay, give me what would happen in this chapter. It's terrible at it. It can't do that. Humans are still great, and books are still great for giving you that narrative journey where, your professor.
I'm just giving you just a little aside, which is that I asked, I think it was ChatGPT, to say, basically, I have a vocation. I like to do vegetable gardening, and so I said, write basically, a description of how I approach vegetable gardening, but do it in my writing style. And what it said was, a garden is just like a database. Okay.
That's
Wonderful.
So I concede your point.
Yeah, no, it does that. With my fiction, I fed it some of my fiction, and I have kind of, not in terms of subject matter, but a kind of Hemingway approach of like, I like really concise sentences, really
simple almost translation style.
And then I go, okay, write me a paragraph description of this in my style. And it can't do it because everything it does is like, this teapot was made like a pot for tea that would hold tea if such a thing were to be there in that pot. Like, why does that sentence just keep going and going about, like, it's a teapot. All you have to say is there's a teapot there. Like,
oh, that's deep.
So it's not good at generating that,
Well, I want to ask you about what I'll call the tension between the ephemeral and the more permanent, and this is what I'm talking about specifically. I think this started happening before AI, but certainly now there are a lot of people running around claiming, well, you just need this chatbot that will answer all your questions, and you don't really need a book because things change so fast. And so no one wants to read a long narrative. And I want to relate this. I know you're very interested in movies, and people are making the same argument there. Like, oh, you really just want to get on a plane and tell it something and then have it make up a 2-hour movie for you. And I'm more in the camp that says, I think there's something to trying to create a masterwork, even if it's just a tech book or something where you're really planting a stake in the ground and saying, this is my thing. Yes, maybe there will be future additions and updates, but this is the thing right here. And it's not just ephemeral and made up on the fly, and it has some permanence and like some structure to it. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So here's a controversial topic that's not all that controversial. A lot of people hate modern Disney Star Wars, right? Like, they don't like all the weird places it's gone. And one thing that's often cited is that George Lucas left the mix in like 2012, and he was the guy, right? He was the guy. That's Star Wars. It's what George Lucas says is Star Wars. So then when you have what J.J. Abrams says, what Kathleen Kennedy says, what Rian Johnson says, and Rian Johnson's movie, the second of the newer movies, completely contradicted J.J. Abrams movie.
Yeah.
And so you've got all these threads. And so it is a choose your own adventure, right? Like all these creators are going, well, this is what I think and this is what I think. And then nobody liked it anymore.
Right.
There's really something to be said for that one person vision of this is what that is. That doesn't mean you have to love it. You could hate Star Wars for George Lucas's vision. You could just say, I don't enjoy that. But then you want to go see, something else that has that person's vision. Like Rian Johnson does the Glass Onion movies. There's where his vision should be, and you want that vision there. And books do very much offer that, where that's you're going through these 10, 12, 13, 14 chapters. And you're getting that one person's vision. Right. And then as you're trying to learn, it is a cognitive thing. And when you're trying to learn something, having one authority, that you go, that's who's teaching me, is really helpful. And at the risk of mixing metaphors, I find this in just classes, right? Like if you've ever been in a class where you've got the guy next to you who thinks he knows everything, but he's also a student, and you're like, okay, I hear what you're saying I should do, but that's not what the professor just said. So I'm going to do what he said. And books, still bring that. So I think there's a power there.
So here I want to take a look at, from the theme of like books plus.
Sure.
Which is that, because I presume that you've digitized, the vast majority of your content. Or have like all the books from from X year on, I'm presuming are all digitized?
Yes. They are.
And so therefore, I'm thinking and what's interesting what you're saying is that, through a book you get a narrative that's told through basically, the vision of the author.
Yes.
So it's a coherent narrative. But of course you have a lot of folks that basically, who write on cross-cutting themes.
Sure.
And so what I'm wondering is, with AI on the platform, can we now, through O'Reilly, basically say, by the way, compare basically what Matt Housley said with what Joe Rice said, and by the way, is Matt Housley wrong again?
I know, this is what he has to deal with. This is what I have to deal
with. That's what you got to deal with, yeah. You can, to an extent, actually, with the current tools, and I kind of like that. It's an interesting idea to evolve that. But the O'Reilly Answers actually very much cites its sources, which is also how we make sure authors get paid. So when it cites you, that you get a chunk of we used your content.
Yeah.
And so then that gives you the chance, because as it's citing, it even has the little citation number next to it. You can click that. Yeah. So it says, well, this idea came from Matt, this idea came from Joe, and this. Yeah. And since our platform contains Pearson and Pact and A-Press and a bunch of others, it'll even take you out. So it might say, well, and this is what Bill Inman thinks of that,
Yeah. So you can kind of put all these voices together and compare them.
Yes, and compare them. Yeah. And you get this aggregate answer, which, if you want just to kind of get a quick landscape, and then you can dive into those, which I really enjoy, not just with O'Reilly, but I like to use Perplexity when I'm doing research, because it does that. Yeah. And then I can go through the articles pretty easily and go, okay, I see where you got this idea and that idea, and do a deeper dive, I
think that's great, because to me, AI chatbots are actually, when they're done right, when the back end is implemented correctly, so you're doing text search and such, they're a great search engine more than anything else. Yeah. And having a PhD in math and everything, when you're doing research, it's actually the same process, because you read someone's paper and they cite someone else, and you're like, oh, and then you have to go read that paper to do it right, because you can't quote the quote, because often the person quoting it might not get it quite right or something, right? You have to go dig and say, what did this original paper actually say? What did they prove, or what physics result? What was their theory? And then you go use that original paper. And if you use chatbots correctly on the O'Reilly platform or otherwise, they're pulling out these references, and maybe they get it wrong sometime, but at least you can go look and dig into what Bill Inman said originally.
Exactly, yeah. And I think lots of people use it that way. We see it used that way. And it winds up becoming a promotional tool for the book, because that's a quick way. They've come in, they want that quick answer. How do I create a Hello World app with Python? They see the resources, they go, okay, this looks like a great way to learn Python. Yeah. I want that book. And then they dive into that one and continue their journey. So I think so. Absolutely.
Right.
Nice.
Right. Well, Aaron, really appreciate your taking the time to kind of share basically the relevance of books. I have one last question, which is that we talk about that the content of books is still relevant. Yeah. Do we still get into print, or is it all electronic now?
There is still print, believe it or not. And I've said for a decade and a half at least. I think print will stay because it's vinyl records are the only medium of music that has actually gone up in sales every year since 2015.
Yeah.
So digital sales have gone down, even though the bulk are digital sales, they go down, vinyl goes up. Because people like to have that album cover and they can see it and they can buy it, right? You can be like, I actually bought this and it's mine, whereas on my phone I buy it and it's just whatever, but you can, this is mine, I have it, you can show it to your friends, it's there. I think print books have that panache where they're like, it's there, it's mine, I can have it. And they don't run out of batteries. So.
And I feel like, I mean, you know, we've seen our royalties sort of drift more toward the online platform. So clearly that's growing, and you know, but print feels like a good advertising medium. Because, you know, how many times, if you're in the tech world, have you seen some book on someone's shelf and you're like, oh, that looks cool, and then you borrow it, or you're like, oh, I go get the latest edition of this book, or you go to O'Reilly's platform and read that book. I mean,
and just yesterday we saw lots of signings, and people were very excited to get print books. They were like,
they still like the signature.
I want to do that.
Well, Aaron, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
This was fun.
Now let's all wish ourselves luck and try and get out of here tonight.
Oh, fingers crossed.
Austin's got this, like, you know, 1/2 inch layer of like ice, so it'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting to escape. Absolutely.
Sounds good.
At any rate, good luck, and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. Yeah, thank you.